we've seen cafe racers hail from some pretty odd places, some pretty obscure places, but Davenport, Iowa, I would have to say, is the most obscure and unlikely.
I started building custom bikes probably around 2000. It was my first jump into building something with a cafe style to it. And I've just been building bikes on my spare time ever since. I find a lot of bikes on Craigslist and eBay. I just happened to get on eBay and just put a search in for Honda. Find me a Honda motorcycle within 100 miles. Sure enough, there's a cx500. The bidding was up to $120 and the auction was over in 8 hours. So in 8 hours, I was sitting at that computer ready to hit that enter button in the last minute. I threw a bid in and $272. I was going to pick up a bike with a full tank of gas. So I really only paid $250. Got a barn on the family farm. Oh, it's north of Dubuque. Used to be an old barn that we raised hogs in, and it's a good place to stash all my bikes. Kind of like the crazy cat lady. If I see a bike for sale, if I got the money in my pocket, I'm going to buy it. And if I got a place to stick it, it's coming home with me.
Hey, all right. Not as bad as I thought it was. Not too bad. Too wink gonna need this. I don't think I'll be carrying a passenger or luggage. Huh. Still got air in the tires. The birds have been taking care of it for me. All right, time to get started.
The way that Greg stores his bikes in the fabled family barn here in Cornfield, Iowa, it almost seems like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting or something out of a book. It seems very romantic. Most people buy bikes, they work on one bike at a time, they either keep them or have to sell them off. He's very fortunate to have a family farm to store his bikes in.
When I look at a stock cx500 with a windjammer, sissy bar, big fluffy seat, it's ugly. Can you see it happening yet? Can you see the cafe racer?
I'm amazed that Greg could look at one of these motorcycles and actually see a cafe racer in it. I mean, it doesn't have anything svelte or low weight or racy or aerodynamic about it. It's a big, ugly shoebox-shaped motorcycle.
I like to take an ugly bike to turn into a cafe bike. It just seems like more of a challenge to make something so much better looking than to actually take a bike that looks good to start with and then mess it up. Now that I got everything out of the way of the tank, I'm going to set the tank back on so I can get a visual. All right, time to break out the Sawzall. No going back now.
Yeah, the cool thing about Greg is he actually envisions using weight loss instead of high-performance parts to get better performance out of the bike.
Stripping the bike down, I probably stripped off 100, maybe a little more, about 100 pounds of excess baggage from the bike, and should bring it from close to 500-pound bike down to around 400 pounds, a little under 400 pounds, I believe. But by throwing that 100 pounds off, it's going to make that bike handle better and seem like it's got a lot more power.
He dropped 100 pounds off this bike, so the horsepower to weight ratio is going to go way, way up. It's going to be incredible.
When do I officially call it a cafe racer? Once it's got all the fat off of it and it's just a lean bike with the bare necessities on it. That's when I would call it a cafe racer. Usually from the time I pull the bike out of the barn and bring it home, it'll take 3 to 4 months, depending on the spare time I have. I'll have 80 to 100, sometimes over 100 hours in a bike.
This probably wouldn't be approved by a shop teacher.
I think Greg Hageman is probably one of the best in the industry today. His level of expertise is unparalleled, and he's meticulous. If you look at him work, he stands back, he's like a sculptor. He looks at the piece, he stands back, you see him thinking actively. He pulls a piece off, he takes it out in the shed, he works with it, he bends metal, and the fact that he creates his own parts rather than buys them is just so impressive.
All right, that's about it. I think we're going to call her a day. Got the powder coating back. Time to go through everything and see how it looks. All right, time to put the frame on.
It's mad impressive to see somebody who can just take a bike like a model kit. He's already laid out the parts. That was very impressive because he puts things out, all the nuts and bolts on the table, the batteries on the table, the taillights on the table. He knows exactly what's going to go where. Nothing is left to happenstance. He's just such a meticulous thinker that he's already got the whole thing planned out in his head.
This is the first shaft drive bike I've ever messed with. I've always wanted to do a shaft drive just because I remember riding a shaft drive back in the 80s and feeling how smooth it was and how when you hit that throttle, the back of the bike lifts up and lunges forward. It'll be nice. Try to build bikes with as little money as possible just because, you know, I don't make that much money as a motorcycle mechanic. This is a highly modified shifter. Oh, and it works smooth. The early cafe racers, those guys didn't have that much money either. That's how you did things. You didn't build a cafe racer. You didn't spend a lot of money on a bike. You tweaked it on a budget.
The reason his bikes look so pretty, I mean, this does look like a Honda cafe racer that Honda might have produced itself right on the showroom floor because he's so meticulous. He cleans everything. He shakes his bolts out in a parts cleaner before he even puts them back in the bike. You don't have to do any of this, but he loves to do it.
It makes me very proud because the bikes are usually things you wouldn't even want hanging out outside the garage, much less in the garage. So that he can make them, they look brand new, like they just rolled off a line 30 years ago.
It ran before. It will run again. Might not be right now. If it doesn't start, if it at least cranks over, we're doing good. But if it starts, oh man, that saves a lot of work. You have no idea how happy I am just hitting the starter button and hearing the motor crank over. But then to hear the thing run, it actually started after a few revolutions. Oh man, that's a big relief.
When he actually pressed the button and it started up, he's a very subtle dude. He just sort of like stepped back and sort of coolly said, yeah, that's great. Now, I was happier than he was, I think.
It's a good day.
First became interested in motorcycling.
Looking at it now, I'm really happy with how it looks. Until I ride it and take it out on the road and see how everything handles and everything works. There might be changes to the suspension, you know, different tuning, but, you know, just minor tweaking. I would say it's a success now, definitely. I will have to do some tweaking to it to make it where I want it to be.
Awesome. Squeaky brakes. Need to mess with the carburetors a little bit. I think they need to be jetted, dialed in a little bit better. That's about it. Just a little bit tweaking, and I think it's good to go.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what purists will say when they see Greg's bikes, because he follows the purist rule in that less is more. You know, the bike will go faster with less stuff on it, but it has a shaft drive, and that's not really a cafe thing. That's a heavy thing. That's very sort of modern Germanic kind of thing. So I'm curious what the purists would say once they see his bike.
For a purist point of view, we sent Greg and his CAF cx500 to the Windy City and into the capable hands of ton-up Chicago's Larry Fletcher.
I usually ride British. I've got a BSA Rocket 3 and a Triton.
Shaft drive feels very smooth. This bike has little vibration. And the fact that I ride British, vintage British, I'm used to a lot of vibration. So, feels very smooth. As far as suspension, very smooth suspension. I've been hitting a lot of bumps on these Chicago streets, which can be a little rough. And this bike handles them with ease. Like I said, it feels like a modern machine. Well, we took it out of Ace Motorcycles here, and we took it east up to Lakeshore Drive. And city streets, like I said, handling was great. But once we got on Lakeshore Drive, I was able to open her up a little bit. Encountered some serious headwind going north, so that was a little bit of a challenge. But coming south, I was able to do the ton, and like I said, she handled extremely well. I was very impressed.
I like to build a bike for my personal satisfaction. I don't build them to show, but if it goes to a show and other people appreciate it, I think it's awesome.
But I think the big thing with this is how the profile of the bike changes and how the look changes very easily with, in this case, a lot of modifications, but how the bike really turns into a racing-looking bike and just the overall cleanliness of what they turn into from being really ugly bikes in a lot of cases to something that looks race and just, you know, race-proven and this clean and polished.
The case is what's the most amazing to me, because most bikes you can get the chassis and the wheels, exhaust to look this good, but to not have any, not have any grime on any of these flanges is really, really hard to do.
I'm a purist as far as British goes, but I'm a believer, put it that way. Through the years, I've been learning that these Japanese cafe racers are fantastic bikes. This one really made me a believer.